the top stories. St. Kitts and Nevis committed to protecting the reputation of the CBI program. Threat level against police raised to high in Jamaica, and Trump and Biden battle in ugly first U.S. election debate. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is Wednesday, September 30th, 2020. I am your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Nationally, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis is committed to protecting the reputation and gains of the Federation's Citizenship by Investment, or CBI program, the world's oldest and most trusted economic citizenship program. This was the word from Prime Minister Dr. The Honorable Timothy Harris when he, along with Chief Executive Officer of the Citizenship by Investment Unit, Les Khan, participated in a webinar dubbed St. Kitts and Nevis, Taking Action to Meet Investor Needs in 2020. The webinar, moderated by the Emma Brain of Gulf News in Dubai, took place on Tuesday and offered prospective investors around the world insight into the history, benefits and operations of St. Kitts and Nevis's program, including its strict and robust due diligence procedures. Prime Minister Harris stated that after 37 years, St. Kitts and Nevis has much to be proud of with respect to its CBI program. He said, quote, 37 years after, we are proud to be considered internationally to have the oldest and the best CBI program. 37 years after, we have the longest experience in the management of CBI programs. 37 years after, we have adjusted our legislative framework to ensure that it is stronger than ever before. And with 37 years of experience, we have been able to engage investors far and wide to the attractiveness of St. Kitts and Nevis, end quote. Dr. Harris noted that with so much history and benefits gained over the years, his Team Unity government will firmly protect the reputation of the country's CBI program. The government recently introduced a limited time offering that allows vetted families of up to 4 to obtain citizenship for US $150,000 instead of US $195,000 by investing in the program's Sustainable Growth Fund. And in other news, St. Kitts and Nevis has once again renewed its call for Taiwan's inclusion in the United Nations. Addressing the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly on Saturday, Prime Minister Dr. The Honorable Timothy Harris said, quote, the Republic of China, Taiwan remains a valuable partner for peace, prosperity and development with the fullest respect for international law. He said, quote, Taiwan has stayed true to its long-standing traditions and has remained a true partner in the fight against COVID-19.
We have seen firsthand Taiwan's exemplary management of the pandemic within its own borders, and we have been impressed, quite frankly, by its willingness to help vulnerable states all around the world. Taiwan has assisted many states in combating this unprecedented health pandemic by sending more than 51 million surgical masks, as well as other medical equipment, to more than 80 countries.
The Prime Minister said he is of the view that the international community has been deprived of the gift of true partnership offered by the 23.5 million people of Taiwan.
My hope is that Taiwan can be included in the UN system, particularly the WHO, its meeting, its mechanisms and activities, thereby improving the global response and resources available to address transboundary crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic. The exclusion of Taiwan, its experience, its expertise and resources, in my view, leaves a partial vacuum in the global response to COVID-19. The World Health Organization can only benefit from the inclusion of such a worthy member.
Prime Minister Harris also said the existence of the antiquated embargo against Cuba flies against the desired spirit of global partnership. He said, quote, at this time more than ever, vulnerable nations must be free to access Cuba's expertise in health and a myriad of other areas of global concern, end of quote. In other news, officials from the tourism sector will be featured on today's edition of Working For You. The special guest will be Permanent Secretary Acting in the Ministry of Tourism, Mrs. Carleen Henry Morton, and Chief Executive Officer of the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, Ms. Raquel Brown. Amidst the COVID-19 global pandemic, the officials will discuss the present state of tourism in St. Kitts and Nevis, how stakeholders are managing the situation, and ongoing work to promote health and safety within the destination, among other pertinent matters. Working For You is carried live every Wednesday on ZIZ and other radio stations from 1:30 to 3 p.m. The program is also streamed live on the SKNIS Facebook page. We now move to news on the regional scene. The Jamaica Police Federation says its members are increasingly becoming the subjects of violent attacks and have increased the threat level against them to high as a result of fatal shootings and numerous cases of assault. In a little over a week, there have been 5 noted incidents of violence against police. More in this report.
Members of the Jamaica Constabulary Force serve, protect and assure they are reckoning with recent violent attacks. Prime Minister Andrew Holness says that the incidents are an attack on the state. So how will the Jamaica Constabulary Force respond to the emerging crisis?
In a little over a week, there have been 5 noted incidents of violence against the police. This includes the killing of a constable on Friday night in Maxwell Avenue and more recently a police service vehicle being damaged in St. Anne by patrons after the police ordered promoters to end a party which was in breach of the Disaster Risk Management Act. Senior Superintendent of Police and Head of the Corporate Communications Unit at the Jamaica Constabulary Force, Stephanie Lindsay, says the threat against police is always high.
But I think we have come over time to accept it as part of what we do, because it's very dangerous to be a police officer in Jamaica. The likelihood of you being injured or killed in the line of duty is much higher than in some jurisdictions.
The JCF says it remains committed to detect and tackle criminality at all levels, even as there are more reports of violence being directed at its members.
When you lose a good officer, you tend to find that the colleagues and the person say, look here, we can't afford for our member to pay the ultimate sacrifice, and we don't continue with the journey. So usually that's what you find. So there is this motivation to just continue to do what our member gave up his or her life for.
She emphasizes that the recent incidents are a reflection of how lawlessness has invaded the society.
It happens in the country every day. You see families killing each other. You see young members turning on each other. You see they killing the average person. So is this culture of violence that you see every day, and it plays out everywhere. Now we're seeing that they're turning that level of violence towards the police force.
Christine Forbes, CVM Live.
In St. Lucia, police are trying to determine the identity of a corpse discovered by lawmen over the weekend. The body was discovered in a densely forested part of Garand Babanu on Sunday. According to police, the male body was in an advanced stage of decomposition. Here's more in this report.
With facial features unrecognizable, police confirmed that the male body was discovered in what is suspected to be a small marijuana plantation. A firearm was also discovered in the vicinity of the body. While the corpse was being processed by the island's pathologist, other police officers seized the opportunity to confiscate the marijuana plants discovered on the scene. Scores of people gathered at the scene when the body was finally brought up from the wooded area. Family members could be seen being consoled after it sadly hit home that the body may have been that of a relative who had gone missing for some time. Unconfirmed reports state that the body is suspected to be that of 36-year-old Mishak Emilie of Bogis Babono. A post-mortem examination is scheduled for later this week. The examination will confirm the cause of death and hopefully the identity of the individual. According to the investigators, the death is being treated as a suspicious death and an update will be provided in due course. Meanwhile, at about 9:30 a.m. on Sunday, September 27th, 2020, the Grozile police received a report of a body found at Moshi. On arrival, officers noticed the decomposing body of a male within a residence, which was examined by the island's pathologist on the scene. The residence belongs to 76-year-old Edgar Delis, who is believed to be the deceased. A post-mortem examination is scheduled for later this week, at which point further details will be provided. For the DBS News World, I am Alex Bousquet.
On the international scene, chaotic interruptions and personal insults marred the first debate between U.S. President Donald Trump and his Democratic challenger Joe Biden in Ohio. Discussions on coronavirus, civil unrest, and the economy were often drowned out, and Trump has provoked outrage for failing to condemn white supremacist groups. Al Jazeera's John Hendren reports from Cleveland, Ohio.
It was less a debate than a verbal brawl. President Donald Trump, lagging in polls, lashed out early and dominated the clock. Trump repeatedly sought to throw Joe Biden off balance with a blizzard of interruptions that left the moderators scrambling to regain control.
The worst part of Obamacare.
Sir,
Chris,
you're
that was the
debating
worst
him,
part
not
of
me.
Obamacare.
Let me ask my question. President, I'm the moderator of this debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer.
Go ahead.
Chris,
we want to get rid of it.
I understand it, sir, but I have to give you roughly equal time.
Good.
Please let the vice president talk.
Good.
Biden, sometimes struggling to get back to his point, repeatedly lost patience.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown.
Will you shut up, man? Listen.
There were moments of coherent conversation on why each should be president.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years.
And why the other man should not.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I've gone head-to-head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy.
There were bitter exchanges on the coronavirus.
Let him finish.
Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID? A lot of people died, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President?
Don't ever use the word smart with me.
And there were heated accusations over taxes.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
You're
by
the
way,
worst
you were a
president
vice-
America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me
Trump
say-
denied a New York Times report that he pays a pittance in taxes.
Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
Show us your tax
I paid
returns.
$38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million
Show us your tax
1 year.
returns.
And the president declined once again to condemn white supremacists.
But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing.
Biden tried to be the adult in the room, the man with a plan to resolve the coronavirus and to restore civility to government. Trump tried to befuddle Biden with constant interruptions, playing into the narrative that the former vice president is beyond his prime. And Trump sought to draw Biden's ire with attacks on his son Hunter, with some success.
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He
for
wasn't dishonorably.
cocaine use.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it. And I'm proud of him.
In a starkly divided U.S., the debate might have changed few minds, but it might well have hardened positions between two candidates with little love lost between them. John Hendren, Al Jazeera, Cleveland.
The coronavirus pandemic has led to significant job losses in the Philippines. Many people across the country are going hungry as the country struggles with its first recession in nearly 30 years. Al Jazeera's Jamila Alindogan reports on that story.
Ramboy Panganiban says his family feels lucky if they are able to eat 3 times a day. He used to earn an equivalent of $6 a day selling food, but now he says he's happy if he's able to bring home 4.
We've been hungry since March. In the first 2 weeks of the lockdown, we finished off the very little cash we had. And since we couldn't really go out to work, we just borrowed money.
Many people here are in a similar position. They used to be part of what the government calls the informal sector. They are either self-employed or run businesses providing goods and services. But now they tell us many people here have lost their jobs, and some have resorted to begging. And it isn't happening in the capital Manila alone. Local survey shows at least 7 million families have experienced hunger at least once in the past 3 months. That's a record high of more than 30%, the highest incidence of hunger since 2014. The survey comes as the country is well into its 7th month of community quarantine, one of the longest ever implemented by a government in the world. The Philippine government imposed a lockdown when the coronavirus pandemic broke out. But it pushed the country into one of its worst economic recessions in decades. The government says it is doing the best it can. It has given out cash to millions of Filipinos and says it hopes to give more.
Kaya nga po tayong nagbubukas ng ekonomiya.
We are saddened about this. That is why we are reopening the economy to restart jobs and to generate more income for those most affected.
But others say more could be done.
There has been permanent damage done to livelihood, to jobs, and there needs to be a more sustained response to this problem. I think we need to dispel that notion that there isn't enough funding. There is funding, it's just not being used in the more appropriate interventions. There is enough funding for infrastructure projects of local politicians.
This is a community inside one of the country's top business districts. People here tell us life has always been difficult, but now they fear it is getting worse. Jamela Alindogan, Al Jazeera, Manila.
And now for the weather. Present weather shows cloudy skies with thunderstorms and showers. Winds are moving east, ranging from 16 to 23 miles per hour, and gusting as high as 36 miles per hour. Temperature today is 29 degrees Celsius and 84 degrees Fahrenheit. The presence of 2 tropical waves will maintain unsettled conditions across the eastern Caribbean today that could extend into tonight. Sunset today will be 6 p.m. and the sun is expected to rise tomorrow at 6:01 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Have a good one.